Well, this will be completely unsurprising to anybody familiar with my channel, but it turns out that I am an idiot. And instead of buying pressure-treated lumber, I bought stuff that isn't pressure-treated. I continue to be burdened by what has been. In my defense, I was in the pressure-treated section, and I had already been looking at some pressure-treated stuff, and I kind of let my guard down. And instead of verifying that the new section that I went to was also pressure treated, I did not do my due diligence. So here I am trying to cover that mistake by putting some finish on, which I guess I'm going to have to do every couple years now because of my mistake. And one thing that I decided to do as well is put some joist tape down. And these flat surfaces are areas where water can collect and start to rot the surface after a while, especially when you use non-pressure treated lumber in your construction, hypothetically speaking. I'm going to put decking on here in the next video, but to prepare for that, water seeps down between the gaps in the decking and sits on top of the joists, and over time it'll just kind of rot that away. In nature's relentless efforts to reduce your creations to nothing more than atoms, this is just one thing you can do to kind of slow down that process a little. Looks like I got the joist tape on just in time. For the rain, I got up super early this morning because I couldn't sleep. And I figured I'll do this first thing in the morning and not waste, quote unquote, part of the day that I could be fabricating or whatever, and knock out the joist tape. And I'm really glad I did because it started raining. You can see all that rain sitting right on top, which is a lovely sight because it means it's not sinking into the, being absorbed into the wood. I'm about to drill another treehouse bolt, which is one of these massive lag bolts, galvanized, 1.25 inch diameter. And I learned from the first time of doing this, which was this project, drilled 2 of them, that you really can't be too careful when it comes to leveling or any other thing that has to do with treehouse bolts. I mean, once you drill that hole, that's it. You're gonna have to find a way to use that hole. And so I kind of was not as exact as I would have hoped. You can kind of tell that's not level. And so I'm not taking any chances this time around. I strung up a bubble level with a little makeshift. I just kind of gaff taped a piece of construction material there onto the ladder, and then I just strung up a bubble level. And hopefully this is I'm also gonna drill a pilot hole with a smaller bit, because I don't wanna, there's a lot going on when you drill a hole that big the first time. A pilot hole helps guide that, that big auger bit. So that's what we're about to do here. I knew I'd find a use for these extremely long bits at some point. Well, if that's not a level hole, I don't know how to do it then. I can't use my Milwaukee drill for anything other than regular drill bits anymore because I burned it out drilling for a previous treehouse bolt. So for now, until I get a replacement, I'm using a battleship to cross the river. But the aftermarket chuck I bought for this drill won't hold the bit firmly enough for me to pull the bit out with the drill. So now I'm using a socket wrench for some reason. Well, that's a little easier. All right, get it air hose, and blow all the dust and chips out of there, because if there's any chips and dust in there, it's really going to impede the progress. Add a lot of friction to putting that bolt in there. That bolt is already plenty of friction already, so let's cut down on that. Not a good idea. Have some safety glasses on. I would recommend ear protection. People give me crap about this, but I don't think they realize how loud escaping air is. It turns out the auger bit just selfishly decided to go its own way. That pointed screw on the end of the bit just doesn't care one bit about the path I made for it with the pilot hole. I think the string level is still a good idea though. The intent here is to partially put this bolt in with the intent of taking it out again, because the reason I got to take it out again and I'm not putting it in permanently now is because this has got to go on over this, and this has got to sit here while I tack up this structure that I'm about to build. Once this is tacked up, I can't fully weld it out here because, you know, obvious flame reasons. So I'm going to tack it up here, make sure it fits properly, and then I'm going to take this whole thing off again, take it to the shop and weld it out. And at that point, it will have distorted to such a degree that it won't fit on the tree anymore. So that's what I predict will happen. Not really. That's what I don't want to happen. So thread this, making sure, and this is another lesson I learned kind of from the last time, is that if you don't guide this, somehow it'll deviate, even though you've already drilled a hole. How could it deviate from the hole? I don't know, but it will. And so you still need to reference your level there. This is really easy to turn right now. Really easy. I think I want to get this down to about where the threads end before I do any tacking. I must have deviated in the drilling, I guess, not known it. Okay, it seems to be back on track. That's probably good when the threads aren't in there. I found this little I-beam in the cutoff room of the metal supermarket that I go to. You know, you can get those pieces of metal for like half price. And I went to go pay it, and I realized I didn't have my wallet. But this awesome guy, Matt, who works at the store, he's like, yeah, you're good. Just hit me on the flip side. Next time you come in, just pay the $40 then. And you're not going to get that kind of treatment at a big box store, I'll tell you that right now. This is just 2-inch square tube with 1/4-inch wall, and I welded caps on them. You can see that in part 4 of this series. And now I'm just putting these up there to get the spacing right. I'm about to weld that piece right there, square tube with some funky angles on the end, at about a 45-degree angle or so between that I-beam and the Treehouse bolt. And I'm going to tack this with a stick welder, and that's why it's really nice to have a portable machine that you can do this with. I don't have leads that are long enough to span the distance between the inside of my shop all the way out here to the Treehouse, so this is a nice thing to have. And stick is the simplest thing. I don't have to cart around a gas canister. So that's why I'm using stick instead of wire fed process. That really is kind of weird. I must have it on reverse polarity. I bet I do. Sure enough do. I remember this one time I was making my way through the shipyard, and from a good distance away I heard a guy welding using the flux core process, and it sounded weird. It was probably a couple hundred feet away, and I could still make out that it just sounded different. And I knew pretty much right off the bat that he was welding on the wrong polarity. I bet you can't guess how I knew that. And as I approached, he was way up there in the lift. And as I approached, he saw me, and he looks down and he goes, "Hey, could you check my machine and see what's going on with the settings?" And I told him what I thought was going on, and I went and switched it, and sure enough, that was exactly what the problem was. And I wager, it's a mistake anybody could make. I mean, you don't know until you know. And after a couple times making that mistake, you're probably not going to do it again, even though I just did. I should say, after a couple times making that mistake, you're going to know right off the bat what the problem is. This is where we're at so far. This is tacked up. I'm not going to weld it out here. I'm going to take it back. I'm going to take this off, which means taking the treehouse bolt out. I didn't seat that thing all the way in there, so knowing that I would have to take it out. And speaking of the treehouse bolt, I was distressed to see after I got down off the ladder that despite my best efforts, I've still managed to get that thing in there not quite level. So it doesn't matter structurally, but it matters to my spirit. Every time I see that, I'm going to know. I'm going to be reminded of my own incompetence, my own idiocy. So this is what it looks like tacked up. That I-beam is awesome. When my wife saw it, she goes, "Aw, it's cute." So I punched her. Not cute about it. In the next video, I'm going to show how we take this thing down, weld it out, paint it, and then me and my older son attach the assembly to the treehouse deck. The thing probably weighs about 55 pounds on its overhead, so hopefully we don't kill ourselves. If anything goes awry, I always have my son to blame. That's the advantage of having a bunch of kids. Really, nothing is ever my fault anymore, so all these screw-ups you see in my videos, it's my kids.